This is the Luke Fontana interview. It's part of the Dutch Morial Oral History Project.
Okay, I'm George Winston III, and with me is Eric Hardy, and today we're going to be interviewing attorney Luke Fontana, who was he was a practicing civil rights attorney, right, for during the Dutch Morial administration. He's still a practicing attorney, and I'm just going to dive right in and ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you get started in this area of the law.
Well, I gotta have to say, when I graduated from Tulane Law School, for 3 years, I decided just to sort of meditate, take a trip, and just kind of come to grips with some things, because I've had nothing but pressure of a military high school and college and graduate school, and I wanted just some time to think. And I came back to New Orleans in the summer of 1968. The summer of 1968, as you might remember, was a pretty volatile period. Martin Luther King had been assassinated, Robert Kennedy had been assassinated, the candidate running, George Wallace, that would help Nixon become president by that shooting. So there were a number of shootings, and then you had the demonstrations in Chicago in 1968. I arrived in New Orleans after a 3-year absence of being after law school, into that summer working for New Orleans Legal Assistance Corporation, which was a civil legal aid operation from the Office of Economic Opportunity, a federal agency. And it was quite controversial in New Orleans when I got here. The New Orleans Legal Assistance Corporation, also called NOLAC, who the supervisor's name was Richard Buckley. There was some protest by members of the New Orleans Bar Association that NOLAC was going to take business away from New Orleans attorneys, but it was obviously much more of a racial thing. We were going to be representing poor people in the city of New Orleans in civil matters, and these poor people who have never really had representative in the city of New Orleans before were, of course, black for the most part. So there was a controversial thing, and I dove right into being the chief of the Neighborhood Legal Service Office in Algiers, Louisiana, and that was located in the Algier Fisher Projects through the Total Community Action Center. And from that experience, I began to experience a large range of problems facing poor people in the community in New Orleans. Police brutality was definitely one of them, right? I had many experiences through NOLAC at that 2-year period of my law practice career at the Total Community Action Center in Algiers, Louisiana. And police brutality matters, it was just sort of a thing here in New Orleans that if a police officer beat you up, then you had a long list of charges put against you, like assault against the police officer, disturbing the police, resisting arrest. In other words, it wouldn't just be a one-charge thing. And the worse that the police would beat you up, the more charges that you would have against you. Now, to be very frank, it was almost an impossible thing to overcome the prejudice and the system's way of ever defeating these charges. And the easy way out is that you would go to municipal court, where a lot of the charges would be issued against you. And the judge there would be, for example, Judge Andrew Bucara, and he was a very tough judge to overcome and get any. If you went to fight these charges, right? Really, what they wanted you to do was just cop a plea on. Maybe they would release 2 or 3 of the charges, like assault, and you would cop a plea on resisting arrest, and you would waive any and all rights to a lawsuit. And if you went against that copping a plea, and you tried to try your case, you never won it. Really? And I had lots of experiences in municipal court trying to overcome some of the many cases of police brutality in the city of New Orleans during this time. And I had many experiences with Judge Andrew Bucara. You know, I remember one scene where I was invited to sit down and have a couple of shots of scotch inside the judge's chambers and just calm down and start playing ball. And I refused to do that. Because NOLAC had a reputation, really, at the time of really being strenuously protecting the rights of poor people in this community in civil matters. And then through the years, I picked up more police brutality cases. So happens I was the attorney for all the prisoners in Orleans Parish Prison for cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Let's talk about that. How were the conditions in the prisons, as far as the inmates and the prison itself, when you stepped in and did that job?
It would only be described as barbaric and like a dungeon out of the Middle Ages. I mean, let's say a man had a mental problem, and he was shaking. Well, rather than be brought to a mental institution, they would actually chain him to the bars, and you would walk into prison and see crazy, a mentally imbalanced person, screaming. And I eventually represented all the prisoners in Orleans Parish Prison. They had no medical staff. They had like one doctor come in a half a day for everybody. They didn't have enough guards to protect the inmates, so there was constant stabbings inside the prison. And I was able to get a special grand jury report of the conditions of Parish Prison, which were really objectionable. They were given to me by a staff member, Sheriff Lewis Hyde, who was the sheriff at the time. And I went into federal court before Judge Herbert Christenberry and was able just to zip those special police jury reports. Of course, the city would say, well, hey, where'd you get these? Judge permitted it into evidence, and Judge Herbert Christenberry was quite pleased with my presentation of that case, because he thought I was going to take like a week on it, and I took a half a day. And he ruled that I won. I proved cruel and unusual conditions in the prison, and the prison would have to improve. Now, that went for like 12 years, that litigation, because every time I got an order, the city wouldn't do it. I had to go back to rule them in contempt. So that was a 12-year litigation I was personally involved in Parish Prison. In regard to brutality inside the prison, I had a couple experiences. Because of the reputation I had handling police brutality cases, I get phone calls in the middle of the night, very strange ones. And this was a very strange call late at night by a person who was in the medical employee at Charity, telling me to come to Charity Hospital. He would meet me, and he'd give me a pass to a certain floor where they had a prisoner, and that this prisoner had been very brutalized inside the hospital there by police guards. So I met him. I zipped up the elevator. I scooted past the police guard there. And I had my camera. I was going to photograph what I was told was this bloody sight. The police grabbed me, or didn't physically grab me, but stopped me, asked me where I was going. I told them I was going to inside this room to see this inmate, and I was an attorney and a member of the Bar Association, and I demanded to be able to go there. Well, they wouldn't let me. They escorted me into the elevator. They came into the elevator. First thing they did was accuse me of being drunk. I said, well, I don't drink. I jog 3 to 5 miles a day. This was a health period of my life, doing that whole phase. I said, I haven't had anything to drink. They said, well, you're on drugs or heroin or some shit. I said, I don't take drugs. So they brought me down, forced me inside of a room with the... I was told that if I didn't leave the hospital, I would be arrested. So I had to leave there. That prisoner that they beat up, I got to the hospital the next day. Of course, they removed him. And they had a Southern guy there, and he was real Southern and white, kind of a Georgia cracker or something. And he said they just did the wrong thing to the wrong. And he used some derogatory words, not Negro, but... or Afro-American, but he was sympathetic. He said they beat him up mercifully. Well, I filed a suit on his behalf. I got inside the prison, and I filed a suit. And that was one of the first instances where, I filed a suit. I thought I had the cops dead cold. I got a witness in the hospital who's a white Georgia cracker who's going to say they brutalized this poor guy merciless without any reason. Well, that prisoner disappeared out of the prison. Supposedly escaped, was never found, right? So I had to drop the lawsuit. Another instance, I had a call, and I was told to come to a certain section of Orleans Parish Prison. It was like a dungeon. And in there was a young Afro-American stripped almost naked with half his eye gorged out. He was made to go to the bathroom in the corner, so there was fecal matter and urine. I had a lawyer with me who at that time was head of the New Orleans Legal Assistance Corporation, and so I had a witness. So I was able as a lawyer to get to the dungeon, see him, had a witness that saw him. He had been totally brutalized with his eye almost half hanging out, fecal matter and urine, stripped naked. It was out of something brutal, really brutal. I filed suit on his behalf. I had him cold. I got a witness with me, and he disappeared out of the prison. All right, so it's playing pretty tough ball. I represented another prisoner who had been stabbed inside the prison. I sued for damages for him, the lack of security, lack of guards. He was murdered inside the prison after the suit was filed. Okay?
Wow. Wow.
So there was instances like that inside Orleans Parish Prison. I also ended up desegregating the State Industrial School for Colored Youth called Scotlandville.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, in that case, this is while I was working for NOLAC in Algier Fisher. 3 young black female teenagers, juveniles, committed no crime. They had run away from home. And, well, one parent called and said, I'm missing my daughter. She ran away from home. And she was a nice young girl. I mean, she had no prison record. I mean, I'm not talking about any prison thing here. And the cops showed up where she was, at another friend's house, and in the projects there, Algier Fisher. And the cops, rather than take them, they arrested all 3 of them because, I mean, you know, the cops are coming inside of a private home, and they got upset. And the police bring them to the juvenile. So what happened in the juvenile court system at that period of time? Well, they were not advised that they had rights to a lawyer, or they deserved a lawyer. The juvenile court judge said to Scotlandville, to a segregated juvenile institution. When they got to Scotlandville, they're separated from their mom, and they're upset, and they put them in a dungeon.
So let's talk about the differences between the juvenile system for blacks and the juvenile system for white kids.
Well, the way I explained it to Judge Alvin Rubin, who was the United States District Court judge in that case, which was called Hetty Majors versus State of Louisiana, is that the white juvenile institutions were like Southern country clubs, and the black juvenile Scotlandville was like a dungeon. You know, and of course they had a hole there. They call it the hole. That's where they put the 3 girls when the one was on her period. They didn't give her sanitary napkins.
Really?
You know, they were just put inside this hole. Well, that case ended up exposing Scotlandville, and it was a clear violation of Brown versus Board of Education, whatever. And, you know, and Judge Alvin Rubin, the federal district court, we desegregated, equalized the funding we forced the state legislature now to equalize. That's another thing. The funding from the state went all to the juvenile correctional white institutions. Very, very little funding to Scotlandville or the State Industrial School for Colored Youth. So the result of the suit was not only desegregation of the state of Louisiana juvenile correctional facilities, but also forced the state legislature to equalize the funding, and also brought before the people of the state of Louisiana this whole horrendous thing of these 3 juveniles taken from their home, put before the juvenile correctional institution without a lawyer, sentenced to a segregated institution, and put into the hole. So
and what year was this? What year was this?
That would have been when I was still working for NOLAC. That would have been probably in 1970.
Okay.
1970.
Okay.
So there was Hetty Majors, the juvenile correctional Scotlandville lawsuit. And there was Orleans Parish prison suit. And then after that, I began to represent more people that had been brutalized by the police. And I have to tell you, up to this point, no one had broken the New Orleans Police Department.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Gilbert Porter. Who was he, and why was his case so important?
Gilbert Porter was a black male, a nice guy. His hand was deformed. His left hand was totally deformed like this from birth, right? Or his right hand. I'm sorry, his right hand was deformed.
Right.
So he really couldn't make a fist or anything. And he, on a Mardi Gras day, a morning in the black area, you know, there was a shooting, and it was a dance, you know, one of the social clubs. And the guy that was shot was Gilbert Porter's best friend. So, and he was lying dying on the street. Well, no police, no medical thing arrived for quite a long time. And when the police arrived on the scene, Gilbert Porter said, why, where you been? My friend, he's dying. Look, you got to get him some medical. The police, back off. Hey, my friend's dying. And the police, and they just smack him across with a billy club and beat him up and take him to prison. Now, Gilbert Porter is for what? Remember? Now, this is in criminal district court. This charges were not in municipal court.
Right.
This is criminal court. And I remember I told you the worse they beat you up, the more charges they're going to put you in, the more serious the charge is going to be. So now he's in criminal district court on all the assault charges, whatever, resisting arrest. And the police are claiming that Gilbert Porter came and attacked the police, and he hit him. And I said, yeah, but you don't know what hand he hit you with. The police said, yeah, I do. I said, no, you don't. What hand he hit you? He said, he hit me with the right hand. I said, you're not sure of that. He said, I'm positive of that. And then I said, well, Gilbert, and then the case was before Judge Israel Augustine.
Yeah.
For the very first time, you got a black judge
Right.
in criminal district court. That itself was revolutionary,
Right.
okay? And Judge Augustine was a good judge, and he was compassionate, he was fair. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to just let Gilbert Porter go, you know, because he's black, not at all.
Right.
So I had Gilbert Porter raise his hand, and his hand's like this. I said, can you make a fist? He says, I can't. He says, how long has this been? I said, since birth. And Judge Augustine said, send him to Dr. Frank Mignard and have him examined, Fontana.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought him over to Dr. Frank Mignard, and I said, hey, Frank, you know, I'm not asking for any special favors. I just want the truth here, man. Just can the man clench and make a fist? And so Frank Mignard said the right and true thing. Well, what's the medical fact? He can't make a fist. He's got a deformed hand from birth. So he couldn't have punched the cop. Judge Israel Augustine dismisses all the charges against Gilbert Porter. Now I file suit in federal court for damages against the police. I get Judge Herbert Christenberry.
Mm-hmm.
And by this time, Judge Herbert Christenberry and I get along pretty good. He's known to be one of the gruffiest judges over there. A lot of lawyers were scared of him, and he liked me. I liked him. He was an old man. And he got real nasty with me sometimes, but we got along fine because I think he realized that I wasn't, you know, I was trying to do the right thing here.
Right.
I was young and naive then. So, Judge, what happened with Gilbert Porter is after we filed a suit in federal district court, he's walking down the street and the cops get out of the car and says, stop! They want to shoot him. They want to kill him. He knows that. He goes up against the wall and he doesn't move. And they come and they really give him a rough time. And they pull guns on him. They're ready to blow him away. And that would make the lawsuit moot, right?
Right.
But there was a witness or somebody around. So what I do is I file an injunction in federal court before Judge Christenberry saying, you know, he's being harassed by the cops because he's filed this lawsuit. I need a permanent court order injunction against the cops from denying him his constitutional rights. And Judge Herbert Christenberry gives me the judgment. So I get the judgment. So now I'm trying to get the case ready for trial. And we go, Judge Christenberry assigned the case to U.S. Magistrate Carrier. At the time, this U.S. Magistrate, Jim Carrier, he was a real honest, good judge, okay, magistrate. And the city comes in and makes an offer of $25,000 to settle the Gilbert Porter case. There's never been any offer of $25,000. I advised Gilbert Porter to take the settlement. He doesn't. He wants his trial. He wants his day in court. I said, look, man, I'm going to recommend the settlement. I'm not going to try the case, but let's get you a lawyer. He gets a lawyer who tries his case for 3 days, and it was close, but the jury came in with 0. So that's what happened with Gilbert Porter. I guess we're leading up to the Charles Cheatham case.
Which is probably like one of the most influential cases of that time for you, right?
Definitely. Not only for me personally, but throughout Louisiana jurisprudence. Charles Cheatham case was the opening. Have I left anything out in your notes there prior to anything right now?
No, we're doing fine. We're doing fine.
So now we're getting into the late 70s.
Right.
And there's a lot of hope in the community because we have our first black mayor. Dutch Morial.
Right.
I think if I learned anything from Dutch Morial and the Dutch Morial administration is that you should not judge a person by the color of his skin. Don't think because a person is black that they're some big civil rights advocate and freedom, justice, and equality.
So that didn't mean automatic change, or
I thought it did. I was under the impression as a young white civil rights lawyer that once blacks came into the political power of New Orleans, there was going to be change.
So what happened in your opinion?
Well, let's go in the beginning of the Charles Cheatham case, because the Charles Cheatham case, up to the time of the Morial administration, is important here. First of all, nobody had cracked the New Orleans Police Department.
Right.
No, by that, what does that mean? What that means is that no lawyer was able to get a big fat money judgment from the city of New Orleans through police brutality cases.
Right.
Now Charles Cheatham was killed on Bourbon Street one night, next to Papa Joe's. There's a number of characters involved in the Charles Cheatham case. One is the black shoeshine boy. One is a cab driver. One is a white witness, supposedly. One is another witness that sees the cops. And, of course, you got the 3 cops involved, 1 from Jefferson Parish, 2 from New Orleans. The 2 from New Orleans is Danny Deneau and Charles Rabot, I think.
Stephen Rabot.
And the storyline of the police was this, that a black shoeshine boy had approached these cops. They're not in uniform, by the way.
Okay, before you do that, let's talk a little bit about Cheatham himself and describe to me like what made him different from the typical person you normally defended.
Well, I hate to say, Charles Cheatham, I say the typical person I normally defended. A lot of the people I normally defended would just be poor black folks, okay?
Exactly.
I mean, people who were struggling to survive and might have had some minor it's hard to have been a black person in the city of New Orleans and not have a police record because the cops were always constantly on top of you, stopping you, questioning you, hassling you. So down the road, you're going to have something. But Charles Cheatham
was
like
different in that regard.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was a college graduate. He was he worked for Pitney Bowes. He was a corporate person. He was a Vietnam veteran. He had worked with juvenile delinquents. He had married this beautiful, beautiful Creole woman. From the Bayou Liberty area in the outside Slidell, Louisiana, and he was just out for a little stroll at midnight to walking in the quarter, and the police shot and killed him. And they killed a guy who was Mr. Clean. I don't know what you'd say, And there was there was a huge outrage in the black community after his death because they knew this guy could not have done anything to be shot. Killed on Bourbon Street. And so the storyline of the police was that the black shoeshine boy had come up to them and they wanted a shoeshine. They said, no, we don't want a shoeshine. You're just going to have to get away. And Charles Cheatham came in and interrupted them doing all this. And at that point, the police said, we are police officers and here's our identification. And as the police officers showed Charles Cheatham this, they were walking off. Charles Cheatham came, turned around, hit the police officer, jumped on Danny Deneau, and they're on the ground. And Danny Deneau had a pistol around his ankle, one of those kind of deals, right? Now remember, now none of these guys are dressed like police officers. Right. The pistol fell down during the fight where that Cheatham had caused after the police had identified themselves. And Cheatham was on top of Rabeau, and as the gun falls, Cheatham grabs the gun, and then he takes it, and he's got it pointed to Deneau, and that's when Rabeau said, hey, drop the gun. You know what? I can't remember. It was Rabeau or Deneau who said, drop the gun. I really can't remember. And Cheatham turned the gun, and after he'd been told twice to drop the gun, pointed it to whoever it was. It was either Deneau or Rabeau, right? And that officer shot Cheatham in self-defense. Okay.
That was their version.
That's their version. Now, what did the police do when they came to the murder scene? They took the police officers and they put them inside Papa Joe's for an hour and a half by themselves. I mean, any police investigation would know that you got to separate the participants, but they put them by themselves. So they
corroborated their story.
Okay, so who were the witnesses to this? Who were the witnesses? One witness was a white police officer from Cleveland, Ohio, who basically stated that story on an affidavit. Second witness was a guy we describe as being a member of the Dixie Mafia. He had a police rap sheet. I swear to God, it went from that ceiling all the way down to the floor. He was found dead in Lake Pontchartrain like a week later with bullet holes in his brain. That witness who signed that affidavit.
Really?
The third witness was Ronnie Lee Watson. Ronnie Lee Watson, we never could locate, right? The black shoeshine boy had disappeared. So we had to just take what the cops said about the black shoeshine boy. Cab driver had disappeared. The black community, what they did is they retained me because I had a reputation for handling police brutality cases in the city. And they hired a black law firm. And we were hired together to represent Mrs. Cheryl Cheatham and her son. And I basically did I would call it the street investigatory work, right? Because I know a lot of people in the French Quarter, and I was able to go on the street and then kind of gain the confidence. Naturally, I went to the black shoeshine boys. It took like a year. Lord and behold, after God knows how many black shoeshine, and then they got to trust me. And they finally got me to talk to the black shoeshine boy. So I located the black shoeshine boy. I located the cab driver the cab driver, remember I told you there was a cab driver that drifted on the scene and disappeared? I located him. So I got the black shoe shine boy, I got him. The other guy is dead, Ronnie Lee Watson, can't be found. I come up with a theory of the case that it was negligence on behalf of the gun falling out, right? That was a negligent thing. He should have had it. And I talked to the black shoe shine boy. The black shoe shine boy said the cops, I asked them if I could shine their shoes, and they said, hey, get out of here. And they were really rough with me. And Charles Cheatham came up, but he didn't see everything. Right. The black shoe shine boy. The cab driver, the same thing. He only saw so much, not the actual shooting. The cop from Cleveland. We interviewed him, and the lawyer, one of the lawyers in that law firm that I'm working with, identified him as a plant. So he's a plant. He's a plant. And gave reasons why he thought he was a plant. And he says, you know what? He's not going to be at the trial. And he was right. The guy was a plant. Just to bolster the police story. But that's all we're with. So we go, and another thing I had located that was kind of weird is I located a white woman in the Algiers that was stopped by this Danny Deneau and Rabeau. And her and her son, I believe. And they were hassled by it. So I had a white woman saying these cops had a propensity. That wasn't too much.
Yeah.
Didn't have the actual shooting scene. So, okay, we're getting into the Cheatham trial. And the Cheatham trial was pretty interesting. I just got to give you one thing that happened in the Cheatham trial because the city attorney told Judge Tom Early he wanted to approach the bench with us. So me and the black law firm, we approached the bench, and the city attorney says to Judge Tom Early, I want to have Fontana and him, this other attorney, arrested. They got stolen police district attorney documents in their briefcase. And so, and I'd say another thing. That's another thing I should say right now. The district attorney Harry Connick should have indicted these police officers after this whole trial and everything. He never did. Well, he did. He didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the time, so Judge Early was cool. He chomped on his cigar and he looked at the city attorney. He said, "You know what? Frankly, I don't give a goddamn. Get back to the case." We go back to the case. Judge Early says, "Case dismissed for the afternoon," giving us a chance to get out of there, right? But now we've completed 2 days of our trial. We're the plaintiffs. Why would we ever want to? We tried to serve Ronnie Lee Watson, but he's no longer at that address in the Irish Channel.
Right.
So we've completed 2 days of our trial. We're going to complete the third day in the morning. We're almost finished. And it doesn't look too good, right?
Right.
Even though we do have some privy information, and we're pretty hot. We're doing just fine, as good as we can. And it was like at midnight that night, I come to the realization, I gotta find this guy Ronnie Lee Watson. I mean, if one dude is dead in Lake Pontchartrain, and the other dude is a plant, doesn't even show up for the trial, this affidavit signed by Ronnie Lee Watson, stating what the police wanted to be stated. I said, maybe. So I call up this guy, Ison Richwell Ison, that used to be one of my investigators at the Algier Fisher Projects in Nolac, right? I said, Ison, I don't have a car. I said, Ison, man, can you come to my apartment and pick me up at 6 tomorrow morning? I said, there's something going on. I want to go to the address of Ronnie Lee Watson. He said, yeah, man, I'll pick you up. So Ison picks me up. Now, Ison, Ison's got a nice car. He's dressed in a coat and tie. I mean, if everybody looked like a cop or somebody, it's him, though,
Right.
So we drive up to the Irish Channel house at 7 in the morning, where we had the address, and there's this old white man up there, and he's drunk. We say, hey, look, we're not cops. Just represent a black lady, and we're trying to locate Ronnie Lee Watson, man, but we're not trying to get him in any trouble or anything. He's, Ronnie Lee Watson, Ronnie Watson guy. And this little girl comes up, who's about 6, 7 years old. He says, Uncle Ronnie, I know where Uncle Ronnie lives. Uncle Ronnie lives up by past the mountain. Well, there's only one mountain. That's the hill over at Orleans Park. So we asked the old man, we had permission to take this little girl in the car, and he gave it to us.
Yeah.
So we got her in the car. She's rapping away. So we go to Monkey Hill. And she said, no. So we're down on River Road, and it's raining, man. I never forget that. Here comes a train. I said, you got to make it, man. So we make it. It was like a movie. And she's yapping away about Uncle Ronnie Lee Watson living in some kind of trailer park or camp down River Road. Man, I'm not even thinking at the time. I got a 6-year-old girl in the car here. I'm not thinking. You know,
Right.
we got to find this dude. So
Right.
we pass a trailer park on off River Road. We finally come to one. She says, "Yeah, that's where Uncle Ronnie lives." So we drive in there, man, and we go inside this trailer, and it's like windows are busted, beds turned upside down. And I said, "What?" So we go to the head of the guy who ran the trailer park, a
Right.
white dude.
Right.
First thing that out of my mouth, "Hey man, I'm not a cop." You know, we represent a black lady whose husband was killed by a cop, and we're trying to just find out the truth. And this guy, his name is Ronnie Lee Watson, and we just want to talk to him. He said, "Yeah, he's emptying the garbage out. He works for me."
Mm-hmm.
So there's this white dude with long hair. He's kind of a hippie dude, and I said, "Same thing. Not a cop. This is Richwell. He works for me." And we just, so what happened? Well, you got to remember, his affidavit says that the gun fell off out of the holster, and he pointed the gun to the cop. That's what his he signed that as an affidavit.
Right.
I said, "What happened?" I says, you know, and he tells me what happens. Now, you got to remember, this is the third day of the trial, and it's now getting late, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Here's what happened." He said, Charles Cheatham was walking away with the black shoe shine boy. There would have been no fight, no alteration or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He said one of the cops followed Cheatham, turned him around, pulled the gun out of his waistband, and just blew him away. I said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, that's what happened."
Totally different story.
I said, somehow or another, I convinced the guy to come with us to court.
Right.
You know? So I call up one of the lawyers I'm working with who's doing the actual trial. And I say, "Hey, man, I got this guy, Ronnie Lee Watson, who's going to blow this case wide open. You got to keep this trial going." He said, "Where are you?" I said, "We're about an hour away." He said, get over here." He says, I said, "Okay." So I'm all excited, all wired up. I know I got to keep this guy quiet, though. I can't just.
You dropped the 6-year-old off first?
Oh, yeah, we dropped the 6-year-old off first, yeah. We bring her to the school that she goes to.
Really?
Yeah, she's probably about 7. And so I show up. I said, "Okay, I got him. I said, "Where are you? Let's put him on." He said, I just completed a case. I had to come. I said, "Why? You completed a case?" He said, "Just be quiet, man. You just be quiet. Set Ronnie Lee Watson here.
Mm-hmm.
Just cool." It's okay. So we go, and now the city is presenting their case.
Right.
So he's got Ronnie Lee Watson's affidavit saying what the. So the city attorney says, "Your Honor, I want to put." First of all, he tried to put the affidavit on the guy who had his head blown away in Lake Pontchartrain, right?
Mm-hmm.
We objected to that. We had the rap sheet of we call it Dixie Mafia,
Right.
and Judge Early, I don't think, permitted that affidavit. I can't remember what the ruling was. He might have permitted it because, see, under the best evidence rule, if you don't have the actual person, you got to go to the next step of evidence, right?
Right.
So he might have admitted it because it was an affidavit signed in police headquarters of the guy whose head was killed in Lake Pontchartrain.
Right.
So now he's going to try to put the affidavit of Ronnie Watson under the pretense of, well, we tried to serve him. So the city attorney says, "Your Honor, we want to put on the affidavit of Ronnie Lee Watson." "Objection, Your Honor." The city attorney said, "Well, Your Honor, we look, here's the service returns." "Objection, Your Honor." The judge says, "Call Ronnie Lee Watson. You have to call and see if he's there." The city attorney said, "Okay." So they go, "Ronnie Lee Watson." That's the way they do it in court. I go out, "Ronnie Lee Watson." Well, the city attorney doesn't expect him to appear. Out pops this skinny little white-headed guy with long wearing hair. He sits at the bench and he tells that story. I was the lawyer that examined Ronnie Lee Watson at that trial.
Okay.
Blew the case. Just blew the case wide open. And then the judge said, "Well, why did you sign the affidavit?" He said, "Look, at the time of the shooting, I had my 4-year-old daughter with me. And I had to give that daughter to a friend of mine. And the police kept me in police headquarters for 5 hours. He says, I would have signed anything to get out of there and get back to my daughter. And also, the police told me that they were going to kill me if they ever saw me around the French Quarter in New Orleans again." So, man, next thing we got Ronnie Lee Watson out of there in Ison's car and out of the city of New Orleans in the state of Louisiana. That's
Right.
the first thing we did.
Well. What ended up being the settlement on that case?
They offered $65,000 settlement, which was a big settlement after Ronnie Lee Watson.
Right.
And I told Miss Cheatham not to take it. And the jury came in at $656,000. And it was the first time,
Which was like unthinkable.
any lawyer had broken that tight seal. And just getting
Right.
back, I'm just remembering now where police had beaten up some black cab drivers of the Royal Orleans. The same thing. They had a torture chamber inside Central Lockup where
Right.
they had expertise to bruise you on the inside, showed nothing on the outside. I'm just bringing it. I remember that
Right.
cab driver's name, James Ruffin. Same kind of situation, right?
Right.
And I don't think we lost that case too, or Jane. I can't remember that. But so Cheatham, $656,000. It goes up to the Court of Appeal, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal. The case is reversed. You would not even have known it was the same case, right? The head judge that wrote the decision is an ex-city councilman of the city of New Orleans, Judge Peter Beard. He said on the Fourth Circuit, the Fourth Circuit reverses this.
Mm-hmm.
The case goes to the state Supreme Court, Louisiana State Supreme Court. They accept the writs, right?
Right.
And the Louisiana State Supreme Court, thanks to a judge like Pascal Caligaro, came back and reversed it and just said the jury found the facts. The case, the Fourth Circuit, it was a horrible decision. So we wanted, with legal interest, that case came out to $800,000. And again, it was like the first time a lawyer and a client were able to punch through that secret veil of the New Orleans Police Department. Now,
Right.
the sad thing about it during the Dutch Morial administration
Right.
is that the police officer who killed Charles Cheatham was the same police officer that was involved in the raid in Algiers.
Right.
And I don't know all the facts of that case. I only got a piece of that case because Reginald Miles, one of the guys that was killed, who I think was Miss Singleton's boyfriend,
Right.
who I think was decapitated in the bathtub by a shotgun blast by one of the officers involved in the Cheatham case, I
Right.
think.
Reball again.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was.
Yeah.
While her 4-year-old son looked, right? Reginald Miles was the son of Minetta Stem. Minetta Stem was like a classic lady inside the Algier Fisher Projects trying to raise 2 boys, and Reginald Miles was one of the sweetest guys I ever knew. He was a pool shark,
Right.
he was a hustler, but
Right.
he was not violent.
Right.
And she came to me, and for some reason my law firm ended up not handling Reginald Miles' case. I think they wanted Mrs. Singleton on the contract, so I'm not sure what. But anyway, I also got involved with the shooting in Algiers. Now you got to remember, all that was during the Morial administration, and I was up in arms saying, "What in God's name? We got this black mayor, Dutch Morial, and we got this officer still in working for this New Orleans Police Department."
So do you think the Morial administration was doing all what's in its power to try to curb police brutality?
No,
Or?
not in my opinion.
Okay.
No, not at all. And there were a lot of black folks that I worked with in the grassroots movement felt the same way.
Okay.
Rabot was still on the force. There had been an $800,000 payout judgment by the city, and then you got the Algiers shooting thing, and Rabot still on the force. And I went to City Hall. We had some very volatile hearings at City Hall one night on police brutality in the city of New Orleans. Doing this, and I tried to get up and say why under the Dutch Morial administration we have Stephen Rabot still on the police force who killed Charles Cheatham after $800,000 judgment, and they actually yanked the sound off me talking before the city council. I can't remember all the city council members at the time. There were a couple there that were really pro-staunch police too.
Right.
And you know, my experience with Dutch Morial was a total absolute disappointment. In fact, at the Toulouse Theater one night, when Russell Rock was going to give Dutch Morial some kind of reward, this is after the Algier shooting, after Charles Cheatham and all that, I screamed off from the back row, "You ought to give Dutch Morial the horse's asses award," you know. And that's that. I did that in front of 300 people, so I wasn't happy with Rabot still being on the force. And I wasn't happy with the way I felt under the Dutch Morial administration. And I think the Algier Fisher shootings was a total atrocity under his administration. You know.
Did you think the Office of Municipal Investigation made any difference when it came on the scene, like 81?
No, I always felt like everything was biased. In fact, right after the Algier shooting, a black lady was shot who had a mental condition and had like police came to her house and shot her through a screen porch.
Right.
That was after the Algier shootings.
And the case with the parade too, with the police officer shooting the parade.
Now
the drum
the reason
major?
I'm familiar about the black lady through the screen is that came through my law firm.
Right.
So I wasn't familiar. By the time the Cheatham case came, the judgment, the Stephen Rabot and the Algier shootings, I'd been burned out. I was burned out.
Right.
I was pretty burned out.
Right.
At that time in my career, I just about had it. And then, you know, the lady that was shot through the screen porch that had the mental condition came through my law firm. And, you know, Mrs. Minetta Stem and Reginald Miles were really close people in my heart, you know. I mean, she was my favorite Algier Fisher Project lady client. And she was just a woman struggling with that whole poverty, racist thing.
Okay.
And, you know, I had another experience with Dutch Morial. I got to tell you, you know, when Dutch was in the legislature and Representative Ed Booker was his cohort there, and I'd go to Baton Rouge, and Ed Booker, who was a representative, introduced me to Dutch, and you know, I had all kind of hopes, maybe too higher hopes.
Yeah.
And actually, when Dutch was elected, I happened to have a Save Our Wetland lawsuit. I'm the executive attorney for Save Our Wetlands Inc.
Right.
Save Our Wetlands Inc. involving saving all the wetlands in New Orleans East. And Dutch, one of his head backers was an estuarine ecologist scientist, and I was trying to get him to appear in my litigation with Dutch's help to testify that the wetlands of New Orleans East were still viable and should be preserved. And I had talked to Dutch about that, and I had talked to this scientist guy, and what happened is that both of them left town at the day of my trial. So I had a taste of disappointment with Dutch.
From that
and
point.
then after Cheatham, and then right into the Algier shootings, you know, my faith and confidence in Dutch Morial totally collapsed.
Okay. Okay, so from what we've talked about so far, do you think there was an organized conspiracy on the police force to cover up police brutality? And if so, could you kind of like explain to us how would it have worked? How would the process have went at the time?
Well, I think the Cheatham case is the perfect example.
Right.
The Cheatham case is like when police officers come to the scene and to a murder scene where police are involved. They don't conduct that murder investigation properly, do they? I mean, just putting these three officers together for an hour and a half. Also, an hour and a half enables someone, let's say, who's drunk and dishevelled, to clean up.
Sober up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And we had no proof of any intoxication, but you know, we did. I think we did come with a photograph of Rabot that kind of showed a, but maybe a dishelving. So my point is that the Cheatham case is a perfect example of police not conducting a proper investigation and getting the affidavits.
Right.
One guy's dead in Lake Pontchartrain who's in the Dixie Mafia. One guy's a Cleveland white police officer who signs an affidavit but refuses to come to the hearing. And then you got the affidavit they got from Ronnie Lee Watson, which is totally fabricated and threatening to kill him. And the Black Shoeshine boy had been threatened too, by the way. They told him to disappear. You know, that's the most I can get out of it. I mean, if that doesn't show a complete way to organize a conspiracy, I mean, false affidavits, you name it. God, I mean, what more do you need? So that was and then like I'm telling you, with Gilbert Porter and with the guys in prison, with Hetty Mage's children in Scotlandville, this the whole conduct. You know what? I think they like it that way. They like that whole, you know, keeping people down. You know?
Right.
And you know, I think the hope of our country really lies in Afro-Americans in a big way, is that they don't all just sell out, because they know that something's up here. Deep down in the psychic core of Afro-American people, because of slavery and discrimination and police brutality. They must know that in the core of our system, something is not exactly what they're telling us, right?
Right.
And then remember the case with the black cab drivers. They had tortured in them.